Hey everyone, my name is Sam and welcome back to another video discussing the lore of the Legend of Spyro. I just want to take a quick second to thank you guys for all of the support on this series. This has consistently been the most supported series I think I've ever done on the channel. I'm really happy that you guys like this series because I really like doing this series. And yeah, so thank you all of you for continuing to like this series, and make sure to leave any suggestions you have for future videos down in the comments down below. Now this video is actually going to be something that I thought up and that I wanted to do a video on, and it's another alternate history. I know you guys really seem to like those types of videos, and I assure you there are going to be videos just talking about the lore and not coming up with alternate histories as well. But I just felt like recording this video because this was an idea I had that I really wanted to try and explore. So, the alternate history that we're going to be exploring today is, what if Ignitus survived the Belt of Fire? Now, as I'm sure a lot of you are very much aware, in Dawn of the Dragon, the third and final Legend of Spyro game, Ignitus actually dies within the Belt of Fire. He sacrifices himself for Spyro and Cinder to get them through the Belt of Fire and give them a chance of saving the world. Now, I know a lot of you don't actually like the Ignitus death scene. Personally, I don't really know how I feel about it. Jared Pullen has actually gone on record to say that you know, they tried to make that moment as epic as it could be, and it just didn't really end up being what they envisioned it to be. Frankly, I still think it's a nice sort of sacrificial moment. I just think that it probably could have been handled in a better way. But I still think it's a pretty cool sacrifice scene. I'm gonna do an entire video probably, or it's going to be part of a different video talking about why I think Ignitus was not able to make it through the Belt of Fire, considering it's made of fire and he's the Fire Guardian. He should have been able to get through there pretty easily. That's something that I've already thought about, and that's going to be in a different video. But what we're discussing today is, what if he didn't die in the Belt of Fire? What if he made it through? So, unlike the other two alternate history videos I've done so far for the Legend of Spyro, I've only come up with one scenario for this one. One scenario where Ignitus survives. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and I did also want to mention, if you haven't watched my video discussing who Spyro's father is, you're probably going to go and want to watch that, because this video is going to contain some spoilers of that. I'm pretty sure most of you have already seen that video, considering it's on like 180 views already, which is pretty fucking good. But just in case you haven't, go and watch that video first, because some of the information in that video is going to be referenced in this video. So yeah, go watch that one first. So, Ignitus forms the blue shield around himself and marches into the Belt of Fire with Spyro and Cinder. They march for a few moments, going quite slowly through the belt, getting about halfway there. And then the shields that Ignitus has summoned around them begins to falter. The flames grow closer, but he holds on, because he knows that if he lets those flames through, they will all perish. Spyro becomes panicked, realizing that Ignitus doesn't have the strength to get them through the Belt of Fire entirely, and that his strength is failing fast. And he tells him that there's got to be another way. Ignitus begins to suspect that perhaps this is the end of his road, that this is what he must do to get Spyro and Cinder through. He must give up his own life. But this time, he doesn't have to face the trial alone. Spyro huddles close to Ignitus, his mentor and father figure since the very start, and uses his own fire elemental energy to uphold Ignitus's shield. The shield is restored to full, and Ignitus, Spyro and Cinder are able to walk through the belt of fire to the other side, alive and well. Ignitus is very surprised, but very relieved and very proud of Spyro, and probably says his iconic line, "Young dragon, you never cease to amaze me." But all three of them have made it through the Belt of Fire and are now in the Burned Lands. And together, with Ignitus' help, they quite easily make it through the Burned Lands, fly up through the floating islands, and make it to Malefor's lair. And this time, obviously, Spyro and Cinder are not alone, and Ignitus is with them. He tells them not to be afraid, and that together they can do this. He tells them that he is with them, and that he will protect them. And so, the three of them enter into Malefor's lair, and Malefor himself is waiting. Now, obviously, Malefor and Ignitus have never met. Because obviously, as far as I'm aware, Ignitus was probably not born in the time when Malefor was alive. Again, we don't really have a timeline for The Legend of Spyro. I don't think it's ever been actually stated when Malefor was around. Although we do know from Jared that the Chronicler, who was around when Malefor was alive, he did know Malefor. He was one of the dragons that was around when Malefor was alive. And you can actually see the Chronicler in one of the cutscenes where the Chronicler is telling Spyro about Malefor. It has been confirmed that one of the dragons in the cutscene is actually the Chronicler. So the Chronicler was around when Malefor was around, and I'm pretty sure Jared said that the Chronicler was around 2,000 years old, I think. So, if I had to make a guess, I would say that, you know, the war happened thousands of years ago, and I've sort of said that that's when I think it happened in past videos as well. And that does actually bring up a point that I wanted to discuss in this video about Ignitus' age, because I've seen so many people in discussion of Ignitus, and particularly his death scene, that Ignitus, they say that, like, oh, you know, oh, Ignitus was a dragon, like, well past his prime, and, you know, he wouldn't have the strength to make it through the Belt of Fire anyway. But that's actually not true, because Jared actually states that he intended Ignitus' age to be, he intended him to be at the time of New Beginning, which is obviously, you know, only 3, is it 3? I'm pretty sure it's 3 years, between Eternal Night and Dawn of the Dragon, and I'm pretty sure Eternal Night is only like a few months after New Beginning. So actually, well, yeah, I was gonna say it's never really been confirmed, but Spyro and Cinder look around the same age, so it's probably only a few months. It could even be less than that, it could be a few weeks. But basically, Jared states that at the time of New Beginning, Ignitus is supposed to be around 250 years young. He specifically states, and I'm pretty sure the word young is actually in italic, so he's emphasizing that Ignitus is not an elderly dragon. He's young. In terms of dragons, he's not he's not elderly, he's basically in his prime. So, at the time of Dawn of the Dragon, he's not, you know, it's not gotten to the point where he should be so weak that he should not be able to rely on his powers. Obviously, like, the Chronicler, he's a dragon way past his prime, because he can barely, when he's lying down, he has to use his fucking wings to get up. Like, and obviously, like, it seems as though, like, Ignitus gives the impression that he's quite old, But I think it's, for example, in New Beginning, after he uses the Fire Fury, he says as he gets older, it takes longer to recover. But I think it's not really his age that makes him physically weak in some situations. It's just how much he's gone through. Because basically, all Ignitus has ever known has been war, pretty much. He fought for probably the prime of his life in the war against the Dark Master's forces. Because I mentioned it in the last video, we never really know, like, what happened in between Malefor dying and the events of New Beginning. Like, I theorized that perhaps Gaul and the rest of the apes sort of went into hiding for a bit and then attacked the dragons again. But they could be constantly have been attacking the dragons ever since Malefor died. So, you know, the war could have been ongoing for thousands of years with or without Malefor. So it's quite likely that all Ignitus has ever known has been fighting and war. So it's not his age that has caught up with him. It's the amount of shit that he's gone through. So yeah, it's not that, but he's not an old dragon. Jared has confirmed that he's as dragons go, he's reasonably young, like early 30s probably. So he's sort of middle-aged, sort of the younger part of middle-aged, I guess. But regardless, back to the alternate timeline. So Spyro, Cinder, and Ignitus arrive at Malefor's palace, and Malefor is there waiting for them. And as I mentioned before, Malefor and Ignitus have never met each other. Obviously, they sort of spoke briefly when Malefor appeared in the crystal, but never face to face have they met. And I imagine Ignitus meeting Malefor would probably be a very cool thing to see. Because obviously here we have the big bad, the greatest calamity to ever face the dragon world, probably, and Ignitus, who has obviously been this wise dragon that has guided Spyro this entire time. So Malefor walks down from his, you know, throne, and he comes to talk to the three of them. And as he does so, he creates I don't know, like a lock or a pillar of metal or darkness that actually restrains Spyro and Cinder from the green chain that is around the necks, the snake locks that are around their necks and that tether the two of them together. It restrains them to this pillar and sort of holds them back, leaving Ignitus as the only one free. And Malefor sort of says to Ignitus, he takes his focus away from Spyro and Cinder for a moment to focus on Ignitus. And he sort of says that, you know, Ignitus has constantly been a pain in the ass for him, basically. He's constantly been a thorn in his side, you know, always being the one at the forefront of the battle, facing off against Gaul and his forces, always getting on his nerves, basically. And then Malefor starts, he starts being kind of cryptic and, he's talking about a secret that he refused to tell Spyro. And he then states that this apparent secret is the fact that Malefor is Spyro's father. Now, obviously, hearing this, Spyro gets very concerned because, you know, he's never really questioned who his actual parents are. Obviously, he thought for a very long time, you know, 12 years, that Nina and Flash were his real parents, the Dragonflies. But after he found out that they weren't his real parents, he never really questioned who his actual parents were. He didn't ask Ignitus, he didn't ask anyone, he didn't even think about it, seemingly. But Malefor, another purple dragon, claiming to be his father, obviously, to him that makes a lot of sense. You know, he's never really been taught anything about how dragons are born or anything. No one's really had the talk with Spyro. So, to him, obviously, he doesn't want to believe it, but Malefor claiming this makes a lot of sense to him, because obviously Malefor is the only other purple dragon. And as Malefor says this, Ignitus is, this is making him very, very angry. And Spyro is like, he asks Ignitus, you know, please tell me it's not true. Tell me that this isn't, tell me that Malefor is not my father. And Ignitus tells him, no, Malefor is not your father. And Malefor continues to, he continues to keep going on about how Ignitus was never honest with Spyro and never has been honest with Spyro. He's always been leading him down the wrong route. And then he goes into the whole thing about there being other purple dragons before Malefor, calling them our ancestors, and meaning him and Spyro, obviously, and that Spyro's destiny is to destroy the world. Now, at this point, given everything that Malefor said, instead of Spyro, like, you know, like yelling out, you know, like, I don't believe that, he's probably saying that regardless, but Ignitus has had enough, and Ignitus actually just full-on attacks Malefor. He starts attacking him, and the two dragons engage in a fierce battle. Now, I think this would be really cool for a multitude of reasons. Number one is that seeing Ignitus use his powers is always a fucking sight to behold. But number two is, we've never seen, in The Legend of Spyro, a proper dragon versus dragon fight. Well, I say dragon versus dragon. We've never seen a fight between two adult dragons, because it's always been, you know, young Spyro versus corrupted adult Cinder, or Spyro and Cinder versus Malefor. We've never seen an adult dragon versus another adult dragon. The closest we got was the little scuffle that Ignitus and Cinder had at Munitions Forge, and that was hardly a fight. It was over in like 5 seconds, but of what we saw of that fight, it was very cool, and they were just like attacking each other with, you know, biting and, you know, scratching and clawing and stuff. Imagine what a full-on adult dragon versus adult dragon fight would be with elemental powers. So Ignitus starts attacking Malefor with everything that he's got, you know, his all of his fire abilities, and obviously Malefor fights back against Ignitus. Now, obviously, Ignitus is very powerful. Ignitus is a powerful dragon. But Malefor is a purple dragon. And a purple dragon thousands of years old, and with the full power, well, the power, I'm not going to say the full power, of Dark Ether on his side. And, after they basically, all Spyro and Cinder can do is watch, because they're tethered to the pillar that Malefor created. And obviously Spyro is very worried about Ignitus, because he knows how strong Malefor is. You know, he's a purple dragon that is thousands of years older than he is, and, you know, all of the abilities that he has are immense. But they're trading blows, be it, you know, like claws, and Ignitus is launching fireballs and breathing fire and doing like comet dashes and stuff. It'd be kind of cool to see Ignitus do a comet dash. Because obviously you only see Spyro do it, and that's on, obviously Spyro's a small dragon because he's young. But seeing Ignitus do a comet dash would be pretty cool. It'd be like a meteor. And I imagine that there's definitely some fire abilities that Ignitus knows that Spyro never learned. But Ignitus is using his full power, all of his fire powers against Malefor. And obviously Malefor has his ether powers, which are a lot more powerful. And eventually it gets to the point where both of them land. They've probably been doing this in the air as well. They've been flying around the palace. It's as cool a fight as you're probably imagining. And then the two of them land, and Ignitus breathes fire at Malefor, and Malefor breathes ether at Ignitus. And their breaths clash in a massive influx of power. Ether versus fire, and their breaths pushing against each other in the ultimate struggle of power. Now, obviously, it goes without saying, Ignitus is strong, but Malefor is more so, considerably more so, by quite a bit. And as Spyro sits there, only being able to watch, the beam of ether energy is slowly pushing against Ignitus's fire, pushing it back further and further towards Ignitus. And Ignitus realizes this. He knows that he's fighting. Ignitus knows, and he's probably always known since he made it through the Belt of Fire with Spyro and Cinder, that it wasn't going to be him. He probably, like, even in this timeline when he made it through the Belt of Fire, he probably guessed that he wasn't going to survive, because obviously Spyro and Malefor is incredibly powerful. He's like the most powerful dragon of all time. Spyro is obviously very, very powerful as well, and so is Cinder, thanks to, you know, all of her corrupted elements, and she has access to Dark Ether as well. Ignitus is just a regular fire dragon, granted a very powerful one, but compared to the other three, he is quite weak. So, I would completely put it, I would completely say that it's plausible that Ignitus knew that he wasn't going to make it. And so, as he's breathing fire, he's losing the battle against Malefor's ether breath. He stops breathing fire and forms a shield of fire around himself. And the ether breath smashes into that, and it's holding him off for the moment. You can see at this point that Ignitus is almost on his knees. He is so weak, this fight is taking everything that he has, and he turns to Spyro. And as Malefor continues to breathe ether onto Ignitus, Ignitus finally reveals the truth that he's been holding back from Spyro since the very start, in that it is not Malefor who is Spyro's true father, but Ignitus. He apologizes that he didn't tell Spyro sooner, but he tells him that it has been an honor and a privilege to watch Spyro grow into the incredible, powerful, and amazing dragon that he has become, and that he is proud of his son. Now, Spyro knows what's about to happen, but he doesn't want it to happen, and he begs Ignitus not to give up. But Ignitus knows that it's the end of the line for him, and that his path ends here. And he also says to Cinder that, you know, he's not done. Granted, Cinder, you know, he's not his daughter, but he views her as much of a daughter to. He's as much a daughter to him as Spyro is a son to him, and that he apologizes for failing the two of them in so many ways, but he asks them to let him do this, and he says to them to follow their hearts, and that if they do so, they will not fail. And as Malefor continues to breathe ether onto Ignitus's shield, weakening it, Ignitus knows that this is it, and he begins building up the very last of his strength. All of the remaining elemental energy that he has left, he begins building up, absorbing it, and fire begins building all around him. He looks back at Spyro, knowing that this will be the last time that he's able to look at his son, and he smiles. Fire builds all around him, and Ignitus himself transforms into fire itself as he unleashes one last tremendous fire fury that blasts outwards, knocking Malefor aside and destroying the pillar that tethers Spyro and Cinder, and Ignitus is gone. Spyro gets to his feet immediately, looking for Ignitus, but he knows that it's too late, and that there's nothing he can do. Malefor gets to his feet, and he's laughing because he knows that Spyro has just lost the one person who has always been there for him, the one dragon that has always been by his side. And he still doesn't drop the charade of him being Spyro's father, but he knows deep down, obviously, he knows that he's not actually Spyro's father, and he knows deep down he's happy that he lost him. And Spyro, his grief quickly transforms into anger, and he transforms into Dark Spyro. He yells out at Malefor that he took Ignitus from him and that he will pay with his life. But Malefor smiles, and he says that if anything, it's not Malefor's fault, but Cinder's. And he speaks out that it was Cinder who betrayed him, who lured him to the Well of Souls, who tricked Spyro into freeing Malefor. And obviously, Spyro regularly wouldn't believe Malefor. But this is Dark Spyro, shrouded by grief and more anger than he's probably felt in his entire life. And he turns to Cinder, and Cinder backs up because she's quite afraid. And she tries to tell Spyro that, you know, it isn't true, that Malefor's just messing with his head. But before she can do so, Malefor decides that he's going to have a little fun. And he takes control of Cinder, turning her into Dark Cinder once more. And once this happens, Dark Spyro and Dark Cinder engage in a fierce battle, which may, if this was actually within the game itself, may have actually been part of the boss battle. You were locked as Dark Spyro, only being able to use your Dark Ether powers from, the second game, and maybe a few others. A few new Dark Ether powers for, to make things interesting. And, you fight against Dark Cinder. And eventually, obviously, Dark Cinder is powerful, but Dark Spyro is quite a bit more so. And he pushes Cinder to the ground, and Malefor says, you know, finish Cinder, and fulfill your destiny. But then he hears Ignitus's words echoing in his head, that if he follows his heart, it won't fail him. And he looks down at Cinder, and he doesn't see someone who betrayed him. He doesn't see a dark dragon that made his life a living hell. He sees someone that he loves. And the darkness fades away from him as he steps away from Cinder. And the same thing happens for Cinder as well. Spyro's mercy brings her back to the light, and they're together again. And Malefor is very angry about this, and he decides that enough is enough, and that it's time for them to die. And the three of them fly up into the clouds above the volcano, and the final battle begins. And from there, everything happens the same way it did in Dawn of the Dragon. They fight, they go down into the center of the earth. Malefor gets sealed away again by the ancestors, and Ignitus comes to Spyro as a spirit, telling him that, you know, a dragon lives on after death, and their spirit becomes one with nature and offers hope for the future. And with Ignitus's guidance, the guidance of his father, Spyro uses Ether one last time and reconstructs the world, bringing about a new age, and him and Cinder survive. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I think would happen if Ignitus made it through the Belt of Fire and went with Spyro and Cinder to fight Malefor. This was a fun one. I really enjoyed making these alternate timelines. They're really fun to make because it's basically just coming up with, you know, alternate versions of the events that transpired, and just coming up with, you know, what you would have liked to happen, and having things happen that you think should have happened. So I really hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment about you know, something that you enjoyed about this, and if you have a suggestion for either something to discuss in the lore or an alternate timeline that I could explore, then leave it as a comment down below. And make sure to subscribe if you like my content. I do a lot of other things, play a lot of games, do short films and other projects and stuff like that. So make sure to check out my channel for other stuff like this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching everyone, and I will see you on another video very, very soon. Goodbye everyone.